The most engaging, impactful, informative, and entertaining talk show ever. Get ready to hear the voices of many local, state, and national artists, musicians, comedians, pastors, athletes, and politicians. It's time for South Florida Live with Jeffrey Brown.
Never get down. Sometimes it gets hard to know where to stop. Feel all alone. Keep pushing and trying to test and trials. I gotta be strong. I don't know if I can have the dreams I've seen, but I know that it will happen if I just believe.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the South Florida Live Podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Brown. And as we always say, this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. So I hope everyone has experienced peace and blessings on today. And everyone is doing well, and all is well with you and your family. Listen, we're keeping the faith tonight.
See, I know you've been down for quite some time, and it seems like there's nothing that will ease your mind. You gotta be strong, even though you don't know how things will end.
Come on, join us this evening for a conversation navigating through the process of grieving and understanding the symptoms of depression. Come on, join us today. If you're joining us by Facebook, come on, Facebook Live. You know what to do. Go ahead and like and share for me, please. Like and share. And let's tag at least a few people on this evening. Let them know that the South Florida Live Podcast is on.
Come on and sing it. Sing it. Yeah, keep your days. One of these days you'll see, and it won't be very long. You're gonna look on me, and I'll be a long time gone.
If you're viewing by YouTube, go ahead and hit, join us, like and share also on YouTube. Hey, if you're first time viewing us by YouTube, hey, go ahead and do me a favor. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button for me. And when you do that, there's a bell that you will see. Go ahead and click on that bell and click all. That way you'll get notified every time we go live. Would you do that for me? Thank you so much. All right, those that are coming on, I see those that are coming on. Hey, thank you for coming on. Thank you for viewing us. Good evening to you. I'm saying good evening to you. Say good evening back to your boy. Good evening to everyone that's viewing. Thank you for joining us on this evening. Hey, once again, we're having a conversation. We're navigating through the process of grieving on this evening. Once again, I'm blessed to have my friend with me, my brother, Dr. J.R. Thicklin, with me on this evening, joining us as always on a Monday. Hey, listen, we want to have the conversation for those that are going through, that are dealing with it. We just want to find the answers and help you through this process.
Keeping the faith, you gotta walk on, love on, be strong, bring your lips on, I know it won't be long. Ooh. Hey.
That's Pastor Javen. We're keeping the faith on this evening. We're keeping the faith. So, hey, those that are viewing, come on, help us out.
Sometimes it gets hard to know where to start. Feel all alone. Keep pushing and trying through tests and trials. I gotta be strong. I don't know if I can have the dreams I've seen, but I know that it will happen if I just believe. So I'm hoping and praying, believing things will change. Keeping the faith, me saying, oh, gotta keep the faith. Come on and say it.
All right, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds and we're going to get started. 30 seconds. Give me 30 seconds. Come on, guys. Reach out to some people. Those that are viewing, good evening to you. Say something in the comments. Let me know that you're there. Good evening to you. Go ahead and tag at least 10 people on this evening and let them know that the South Florida Live podcast is on. And we are talking about navigating through the process of grieving on this evening.
Things will be fine. It just takes time.
Good evening, everyone.
Keeping the faith on his head. Keep the faith. Let me hear you say. Keeping the faith. Come on and sing it. Sing it. Keep the faith. One of these days you'll see, and it won't be very long. You're gonna look on me, and I'll be a long time gone.
All right. Welcome. All right, those that are coming in, good evening. Ms. Winston, God bless you. Peace and blessings to you. Thank you for joining us on this evening. Hey, listen, before we get started, I just want to continue to ask everyone to please keep these great two pastors and their family in your prayers. We've heard about Dr. A.D. Linward, Sr., and we want you to keep his family in your prayers, his wife, his 4 kids in your prayers as we celebrate life with him, celebrate life of a great man, a great community leader, great father, great pastor on this Saturday. So keep them in prayer, keep them lifted up. And also, if you will, keep the family of Chief Apostle Keith Robinson, keep them in prayer. Pastor Christina Robinson, keep them in prayer. Them and their kids, keep them in prayer. The church family, keep them lifted up as we would be celebrating his life, celebrating the life of a great man, great pastor, great father, great husband. On next Saturday. Pastor Linward, is this Sunday at 3. This Sunday at 3. So let's keep these families in our prayers. Would you do that for me? I know we got to keep the faith. Let's keep praying for them, lifting them up in prayer, that God will continue to be with them and strengthen them and go with them in this walk during their time of sorrow. So Dr. A.D. Linward viewing is this Saturday at 3, from 3 to 7 at Westview Baptist Church. And then his celebration of life service will be that Sunday, the 21st at 3 p.m. at the Antioch Missionary Baptist Church of Miami Gardens. And then next Saturday, Apostle Keith Robinson funeral service viewing will be that the 26th. And also there will be a memorial celebration, a musical celebration that same evening. And then we would be celebrating his homegoing celebration would be Saturday, April 27th at 11 a.m. at Sweet Home Missionary Baptist Church in Cutler Bay, Pre-Rhyme. So keep those families lifted up in your prayer. Would you do that for me? Thank you. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, we're gonna get started. We're gonna get started. We're gonna get started on this evening, where we can have some time to talk. I know last week we had some technical difficulties, but I think we got that straightened out on this week. Everything should be fine and going well on this week. So, listen, once again, thank you guys for joining us. And it's my brother, the one and only. The doctor is in the house, y'all. Dr. J.R. Dicklin is in the house. Good evening, my brother. God bless you. Peace and blessings to you. Once again, thank you for joining us on this evening.
Good evening to you and your audience. It's a blessing to be here tonight and be back with you again. And I have to tell you, as you were giving acknowledgement to those two great men of God that have passed recently, it couldn't help but to center me on the very subject that we're talking about. When we're seeing these deaths happen, unexpected deaths, sometime coming out of nowhere, and just the fact of the magnitude of who they are and the lives that they touch, it gives a whole different type of grieving and a whole different type of impact. And our prayers and our condolences goes out to those families, the churches, but their personal family as well.
Yes, yes, sir. That is tough, and I think we often talk about it that when things like this happen with the pastors and they lose a pastor, there should be something set up for the church
Absolutely.
um, to go through that grieving process of those that it affect and impact them greatly. Because there are some that it probably have is affecting them, having a real effect, because I know Westview Baptist Church, there was a very close knit
Mm-hmm.
family, knit very close church, very close knit connected church. Even Chief Apostle Robertson, that church was very close. So and their members were great to them and were great members, both of them, and they were great pastors. They were great men of God, not just pastors, men of God, but men that stood in
Absolutely.
that community and were great men. And we just, once again, we're lifting them up. We're lifting their family up in prayer on this evening, because that right there is that's tough. That's tough, especially um I didn't want to use it. I didn't want to use it with our topic, with us, with our discussion. But we're here now. We're here
Right.
now, and dealing with Dr. Lenoir, how his death
Yeah.
happened, and just senseless and just out of the blue, just one day, good, and then boom, here's this great this just shocking news
Exactly.
that this has happened and how it happened, and it had affected it's affecting so many people. It's affecting so many people in the community, in Miami-Dade County, around that area, in state of Florida. It's affecting a lot. So how do we try and adjust? They adjust? And I'm gonna say we, because I was connected
Absolutely.
to them. How do we adjust and try and make sense, or try and get our understanding of this senseless happening? Um, Walk us through it. What areas, what directions that's needed for people like me and his church members and his friends, close friends. I know a lot of pastors that were like true brothers to him. What is the process for them?
This is where the song "Lean on Me" comes in. Comes
Yeah,
in. This is a time of all those people that you talked about. This is where they find comfort and support with one another, leaning into each other, allowing the grieving process to take place, comforting one another. What is not the time for? It's not the time to over spiritualize it. Sometimes when we over spiritualize, sometimes what we really are practicing is avoidance, right? We're avoiding it by over spiritualizing it and not acknowledging the pain, not acknowledging the hurt, not acknowledging the loss, as if once again those are sometimes deep-seated cultural things, and sometimes it's cultural misinformation where we feel as if, we go back to that whole thing. I got to be strong, And I know, people are going to use the scripture there in 1 Corinthians 15. They're going to use the scripture there where Paul says that, we do not mourn like, unbelievers mourn, because we have the assurance of where they are. And that's not even the thing. When it says we do not mourn as others mourn, it does not mean that we do not grieve as others grieve. That's not what it's saying. What we understand is that in our mourning and in our grieving, we know that there's a blessed hope. That to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, to know that's there. That does not stop the fact of the earthly separation.
Right.
The earthly separation from a loved one, from an individual that you're connected to. And kind of like what you were saying earlier, an individual that you're connected to, individuals that stands before people who has influence in people's lives, who have served people in so many different ways, individuals who have made personal sacrifices to do what they have done, have given themselves to the work of it. And what happens is inwardly, those of us that are of belief, it almost like we was robbed. And we feel that it's all right to be able to admit, I feel like I was robbed. I feel like this should have happened. There are all kind of questions that arises, especially when we see these things happen. It's no different when we see a young person, maybe, outside of them being killed, when we see them die. All of a sudden you hear a young person died of a heart attack. What do you mean? The sense of unbelief is there. And we start questioning ourselves. When we see spiritual leaders pass, and particularly in the way that we talk about Dr. Lindwar, it causes us to go through so many different emotions. There are those that will have a theological paradox going on. There are those that will have a theological crisis inside of that. How could God allow this? And we go through all of those things there, and all of a sudden we forget that God is sovereign. We forget that that people will, they act out of their own free will. We forget those things. But what I will say, in the midst of the grieving process, you don't want to spend a lot of time on that question. What you want to do is spend time in recognizing the fact that you do feel these emotions.
Right.
And it's okay to feel these emotions. It's all right to talk about these emotions. Find people that you can trust, someone that you can have confidence in. And definitely, if you can't, find a counselor.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Find a counselor.
Right.
Go through therapy. I really highly suggest that when you have these type of losses, it is no different that you see when we have school shootings or even incidents that happen. They bring in every counselor and person that can. Why? Because they understand these kids are all experiencing something in common. They're all experiencing something in common. They go to the same school. In many ways, they're in the same classroom. If nothing else, they all have walked down the same hallways. They may have had the same teacher. So all that commonality, they're sharing inside of that grief. And sometimes we need to share inside of the counsel that we get. And as churches, like I said, don't over spiritualize it. There's something about, the Bible says this: there is safety in a multitude of counsel. There's wisdom there, to be able to come together and to begin to lean into one another and lean there and be there for one another and understand this is a case where the strong does bear the infirmity of the weak. This is a case where we're there to bear one another up and be all right about it. The second thing, don't expect an overnight cure. Don't expect overnight relief. Don't necessarily expect that. Allow the process to take place, to take its course.
Yeah, because we know the spiritual stuff. We know the spiritual side. We know these was two great men of God.
Yes,
we know Pastor Lenoir was a believer and strong, and we understand where he's going. We know but still, when you're dealing with the human side of it, not the spiritual side of it, we often forget that's the part, because now you're talking about a church that has to come back to a building where it all happened at.
Exactly.
You got to come back to a building where your leader was used to stand in front of you. and I'm trying to, wrap my mind around it. How did that feel? What's the feeling that they're experiencing now to be able to have to face this? I don't know if they've started back having service. I don't know if they went back in yet.
I would doubt it. I mean, I don't know neither, but I would say in the life of that, what I would say in a case such as that, that very next Sunday or that very next service, if anything, quickly as you can, get a group of counselors there, grief counselors, people to be able to walk them through it. It may not be the time to preach a regular sermon.
Right.
It's a time that, once again, comfort them that mourn, comfort one another with these words.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to understand. We're not trying to preach over what has happened to them. We want to meet the people right where they are, because this has nothing to do with their spiritual belief. Understand what I'm saying?
Right.
We already have a hope in that. We know that, right? To be absent from the body to be present with the Lord. We know that blessed hope. We understand all of those things. What we're dealing with is the separation, the human separation that's connected to our soul, our emotions, the human separation. As you were saying, those Sunday after Sunday, those midweek service after midweek service, those prayers after prayer, that has been routine. I think Dr. Lenoir was there, 15 years or 20 years? I don't know.
Yeah, close to that, right.
But a long period of time, and this has been the routine. This has been the expectancy. And to see that snuffed out,
that part.
Yeah, it impacts us.
And just thinking about it, they're going to face this on Friday.
Yeah.
Because the viewing is there on Friday. The viewing is at the church on Friday. Yeah. Now, the wife, the kids, if they're attending that, they got to face that reality of, this is reality. My dad, my husband, is not here. He's there. And what's that emotion? I can't. I kind of have a sense of it, because I went back and preached at the church that I grew up in, Hallandale, the Greater Hallandale Church of God, one time, and I was torn with it because I didn't know how my emotions going to be, because I grew up at that church, and being that my parents weren't living anymore, and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to deal with that? And the reality hit me when I got there, and I was sitting in the pulpit and just thinking about my father and my mother and visualizing them in their seats where they normally sit when I was growing, when I was growing up. Seeing my dad over in the corner, seeing my mom on that second row, on the right side bench, and that it hit me. It was like, wow. So I guess I have experienced that, but I don't think at this magnitude.
Yeah, in this magnitude, because one of the things that helped you then was the time that had passed.
Right.
The time that had passed. So the freshness of the normal was dealt with. In their case, though, this will be the beginning of closure.
Wow.
This will be the beginning of closure. Reality sets in, and that's why this is the time when we say pray for them. We mean pray for them. We also mean finding ways to put legs on the prayers as well. How do we serve them? Could you imagine what's going on here? You talk about a woman who's been married to this man, who has 4 children together and fairly young kids.
Yeah.
Fairly young kids. Their whole life has been intertwined inside of ministry, inside of serving. They've known how to posture themselves in serving the people. They have served. Listen, he was the pastor, but they served alongside him. We can never, ever mistake that.
Right.
He was a leader, but that family sacrificed. That family served alongside. That family's norm was impacted by his call and what he held. So now that part is gone, and we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions inside of this. The grieving process for them. What happens as the church go on from there? Were there a succession plan? Well, who probably really puts together a succession plan when someone is that young?
Right.
So the succession plan. So you got to think about it, regardless of what. And we don't even want to think that far ahead. But what I'm saying is that the norm has been interrupted. The norm has been interrupted, and it will never be the same. We often talk about a new normal. Well, that new normal is a hard way. It's a hard time to get to that new normal because everything changes inside a role. If another pastor comes in, guess what? If that pastor is married, now you have a new first lady. You have a new everything. So think about all the years that has been used, that has been spent building that. So there's loss on top of loss. There's multiplicity of loss.
Right. Wow. Yeah. That's it right there. And I don't know. I just feel that I'm feeling my heart goes my heart goes out for the kids.
Yeah.
When it happened, that was my prayer, Lord.
First thing,
touch the kids, keep their mind, and I see the son, he's been posting a little more than his normal.
Okay.
I see that. And he posts one day, this is the first time I haven't been with this is the first time I've not been with my dad this long. My dad has been away from me this long. Exactly. This is the first time that my dad has been away from me this long.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm like, wow.
And he's processing.
Right. And I'm processing. And they're not like it just posts where he's processing it and he's putting it out there.
Yeah.
And,
he's thinking out loud. And that's healthy for him right now. Because think about it. To a certain degree, they shared their dad with the public. You got me? They did so. So with them, there is a collective grieving going on, but he's basically saying, man, because, and you know this for yourself, and we all experience this. When we go through a loss, you think about the period of time. We are going to go through a period of time where we're going to encounter first, the first birthday without that loved one, the first Christmas without that loved one, the first Thanksgiving without that loved one, the first school recital without that loved one, the first, concert without that loved one. So you go through all of these different things, and then and it doesn't necessarily, I tell people, it doesn't necessarily get so much easier. It's just the fact that we begin to adjust, but going through that first is amazing. And that's what he's doing. This is the first time I've been away from my dad this long. Or you're going to go through, so many things. Man, this is the first time. Yeah. I'll never forget when my nephew, I had a nephew, like I said, who passed. And it was shortly after just losing everybody. And the thing I missed about him because he passed May 30th of 2014. Now, you know what I miss so much about that young man? His passion, his excitement for the NBA playoff season, and his whole political thing when the elections come on. Man, you can have a better conversation. And guess what? Man, that was an emptiness that year. It was emptiness even in the year afterward. Because, man, I remember Dale, man, boy, right about now, he been putting
right.
And so those are the type things that come up because it is shared experiences that we've had. And sometimes, even for the ones that are left behind, sometimes that can be part of your healing. How do I share that again? How do I do that in honor of, those type things? One thing is interesting. I still have a pair of sneakers of my nephew. Now, I haven't worn them. But I still have a pair of his sneakers.
Right.
Because that is a part of him that I cherish. I cherish that part. And we all find different ways to process and grieve. And, that's why people sometimes will do a foundation. That's why, you'll see people, some people will tattoo for the first time in honor of a memory of someone that was close to them. Or they do things because they want to always keep that person's memory in front of them. And that's perfectly all right. Our warning is always, don't try to tell a person how to grieve.
Right.
What is healthy for them is healthy. Allow them to go through the process, acknowledging that loss, recognizing their emotion, and then allow yourself to grieve. And that's my greatest thing I tell anyone. I know that we've been told you got to be strong. Yeah, being strong is not necessarily the absence of tears. Being strong is not the absence of tears. It's not the absence of emotion.
Right.
Being strong, so we'll keep it together simply mean that I will keep the hope. I will keep the faith. I'll remember the lessons that I learned. I remember the conversations that we've had. I remember the encouragement that came along. And those are the things that even to this day, as I reflect all these many years later, when I reflect, it's 14 years. No, actually, it's 13 years this year since my father passed on my birthday. And I tell you, every day I live, it seems like the more I go on, there are things about him that shows up. I found myself saying stuff that he said. I found myself sounding just like him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was just, you know what, you brought that up, and I'm laughing because I was just thinking that the other day.
Mhm.
How many people like me have gone through that moment where you end up like just laughing because you like, oh my God, I just sound like my daddy then.
Sound just like him. Yeah, exactly.
I just sound like my mother then. I
Yeah.
just sound like so and so then. Because
Exactly.
sometimes I catch myself in church
Yeah.
and I'm sitting like my dad used to sit.
Isn't
And
it
I'm like,
amazing? Isn't it
oh
amazing? And guess what's happening? It's happening subconsciously. You don't even see it.
yeah.
Yeah. And then you catch yourself and you go, man, yes.
So when that stuff happened, what brings that on? What is that? Do we know? Do we have something for that? A word for that, or what is that? Why does that happen?
You know what? It's no real scientific reason why that happened. That's just a connection to spirit and soul. That's simply what it is. The repetition thereof. And you'll find yourself sounding away. I mean, just earlier today, I was say, sometimes if you're around your siblings, they'll catch on to it. Boy, you sound just like daddy. Boy, well, look at you acting just like your dad. You acting like your mom. and it's interesting because what it is, brother, you've been impacted all along.
Yeah.
But now it's showing up through them. Your reasoning, sometimes you say, man, that's something my daddy would say,
Yes.
and that's interesting, but that's also healthy. That is healthy. Those expressions, those things through there. And sometimes for us, it is a reminder that they're with us. It's a reminder that they're still with us.
Can I ask you a question? Is there a difference between grief and sympathy?
Well, in all actuality, sympathy is what is offered to people that are grieving. My deepest sympathy. That means my heart, concern, my care, my prayers, my thoughts are with you. So sympathy is what is given. Grieving is something that you're experiencing inside of it. And so sympathy is that I feel for you. Empathy is that I feel with you.
Wow. Say that again, Doc.
Yeah.
Somebody missed that. I purposely asked you that question.
Yeah. Yes.
Somebody missed that.
Yeah. Sympathy is generally I feel for you. Empathy is I feel with you. Yeah.
Wow.
I feel with you. And so, it's just like I said, I just came across last evening a young man that I've known for about 6 years, and to look up and see that they're posting his services, I was shocked and I was stunned. And the first thing I go is my prayers and my deepest sympathy
right
are with you. And that's what happens there. I feel for you inside of that. And and we go through it. And here's the thing about sympathy. When people know that you feel for them, it means a lot. It means that they acknowledge your loss. They acknowledge that you're going through something. They acknowledge that. In other words, they may leave your presence and it may seem like everybody's going back to their business, going back to their daily life. But the very fact that they took the time to offer their sympathy, their condolences, when they take the time to do that, it means so much to you. And that's the thing about it. I'll be honest with you, when I personally have gone through things such as that, I never forget. That's when I realized that all the things I've done all over the years, and when it came back to me, I could appreciate it in a different way. I could. When people said, my prayers, my heart goes out to you. Is there anything we can do to help? Man, you have no idea. In the moment, that was strength.
Right.
That was strength.
Right.
Even if I didn't have an answer for them, other than just keep praying for me.
Right.
Because sometimes we don't have an answer.
Right. Now there's several different going through grieving and loss that but are they are there different ways? I'm asking this because I just want to get your input on it.
Mhm.
That you grieve or go through grieving, say for um a divorce,
Yeah,
or say um someone that just gave up that gave up a child in adoption. Um
real good questions.
how different and how what's the process of those grieving and going through those grieving periods and with in that sense in those areas. It's not death, but I went through a hard divorce,
Yeah.
separation, whatever, and now you got a mother who maybe had to give up a child in adoption.
It's a real good question because that's one of the things I actually put in my introduction comments was the fact of this. When we start talking about grieving, we're grieving a loss, right? It doesn't always have to be a loss of life.
Right.
As you said, a loss of relationship. It is painful. You've heard it said divorce is like death.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce is like experiencing death in many cases because there is a separation. There is a separation. There is a departure from a covenant, from a relationship. It's a departure from a norm. It's a departure from doing things routinely together. It's a departure from things. And so that there is painful. And it can have its own thing. I mean, people get divorced and go into depression. People get divorced and have a loss, and they feel terrible that and that separation is there. Now, are we saying it? Is it to the extent of a death, physical death? Not necessarily, because with a divorce, it doesn't mean that you'll never see that person again. It doesn't mean that the fact that that person is gone forever. There's something in your mind knowing that that person still exists, that person still is alive, that person is going on with their life, just like you're going on with your life. So there's not the finality with that type of loss as it is with death.
Mm.
It's not the finality. People run into the exes all the time, right? The whole thing, all my exes are back in Texas. Listen, I know where they are. They may be gone. So it's a different type of loss. It's different grief. If you go back to a mother who may have had to give their child up for adoption, or let's do it another way, a mother whose child was taken from them, maybe because the fact they were going through their own ordeal, drug usage or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's painful. It's a painful, that type of loss there feels more like a failure. You got me?
Right.
That's more like a sense of failure inside a sense of failure, a sense of failure. But a lot of time people are confident in saying, I still did what was best for the child because I knew I wasn't in a place to take care of them. And I'd rather for the kid to have had a better life.
Wow.
But in most cases, when you deal with parents like that, you will hear them often say, as time go on, and even when they've gotten better, they'll say, there's not a day that go by that I don't think about the child I gave up.
Right.
So that's a different type of loss. It's a perpetual grieving, but it doesn't have the same sting in many cases as death, because death is that finality,
And I'm sure that has to be something that kind of just sits in your mind, in your memory of something like that. There is grieving. I mean, there is
Oh,
counseling for
yeah,
that. There is
exactly.
counseling.
They're different type of counseling because some people, deal with their own form of separation anxiety, right? We can deal with separation anxiety just from a friend moving to another place.
Mm.
Or, you think about there are parents that go through anxiety and go through their own grieving, so to speak, when their child go off to college, just like some kids go through that. And why do you think some kids return home?
Mm.
They couldn't deal with that part of it.
Deal
I
with
just couldn't. They couldn't make
separation.
the adjustment. And
Yeah.
so it's different levels of that sense of loss.
Right.
But the difference is it doesn't have the same finality that death has. And that's one reason that if you ever notice they can have a cold case, right? The person, just say the person went missing. They haven't found them at all. Now the family is hurting. They're in pain that whole time. They're nervous, and they're putting up signs. And if anybody's seen them now, a year go by, and they're in pain. They're hurt, and sometimes have lost hope, right? And then all of a sudden you hear, we found, bodies, a decomposition body. And they're doing the medical records, and now they do so, and they discovered now that was that person. What is the first thing you hear them say? That now we can have closure.
Closure. Yeah. They just had that with this soldier that they found from World War II.
Yeah. Imagine.
Yeah. That all these years he was in the unmarked tomb, and they finally did the DNA, the dentist thing, the recognition, and now they recognize it was him. And that's what they said, Doc. They said now that family can put him to rest properly and have closure.
Absolutely. And that's one reason that when we see funerals happen, right? Funerals is that type thing. It's a public mourning, and also the acknowledgement, that this person is gone. And so there's something that happens when we see a person even put in the ground. I know a few people that they won't go to a funeral unless they go to the gravesite too. Or even if that person is I heard a person say, man, I hate that they're going to cremate them. I said, why you hate that? Because I don't get a chance to see them being put in the ground. Something about seeing them buried.
Wow. Just that closure reality, I guess.
It's that closure reality. And we deal with it. Could you imagine what happened during COVID? You remember COVID season? COVID impacted us in such a way. Remember, we could not even bury people for a period of time. Our families could not assemble together. People trying to pay their last respects through Zoom and FaceTime. And for many people, they still wrestle with the closure.
Wow. Yeah.
They wrestle with the closure. I still recall vividly hospitals and morgues overran. No space. And so it was a whole different phenomenon. And so people could not have that proper burial, that proper ceremony. And for many, they still felt like they did not have closure.
And some of them probably still didn't get the closure that they wanted.
They're still battling with it. They're still unpacking. They're still trying to come into grips with it inside of it. And that's why the counseling is important. We have to understand something. When we share space with people, we share life with people, when we share activities with people, when you think about even a coworker on the job, here's a person who shows up. You may have worked beside them in the same department or whatever. There's a commonality that you've had, and all of a sudden that person is gone. Wow. Yeah, we share collective grieving. Yeah. We share it inside of it. And sometimes we've gotten smarter over the years, where sometimes the job, they will offer counseling, grief therapy, and those type of things. For any of you all that feel like you're going through, we have a counselor, available for you to talk to, or we're going to have group counseling therapy that we want to offer to you. And that's come over a period of time, recognizing the fact of family. Because where do a person spend most of their time other than home? It's at work.
Yeah. Now, and I'm glad you went there, because I was getting ready to go about collective grieving. Is there a difference between how you manage multiple and collective?
Well, two different things, because there we go.
Right on time. She's on time. Yeah. She's a
Alexa end. I keep thinking she's an
on time woman.
Yeah, she definitely is. I wish you could learn to cook dinner. It would be just fun. Now, go ahead and prove how great you are if you don't. But anyway,
do that.
Okay. So collectively, here's the thing about it. You said collectively versus multiple. When we talk about collective grieving, what we're talking about, collective meaning the fact that there's multiple people or multiple entities that are grieving the same individual or individuals, versus multiple, when we're dealing with multiple people dying right behind each other. That's a different thing. It is still grief, But that is what we talk about, that succession of griefs, that consecutive thing there.
Mhm.
That is kind of tough to deal with because you haven't had time to really breathe. You haven't had time to really process, one, and then there's another one, then there's another one, there's another one. And we have to learn how to unpack.
Right.
We have to learn how to unpack. The collective grieving is what we see. I always give the example, a few years ago, the Thanksgiving Day massacre there at Stoneman Douglas High School there in Parkland.
Mhm.
All those kids that was killed, 17 of them, I believe, or whatever that number was.
17.
You think about it. As a community, we collectively grieve. As a nation, we collectively grieve. As a school, they collectively grieve. Now, watch this. I don't think I ever been to the school. I don't know if you ever been to the school, but the very fact that because of the nature of it, and we all relate to what? Here's children in a schoolhouse innocently going there to learn, and their lives was taken from them. We collectively grieve because of the emphasis and because of the magnitude of how it happened and when it happened. Are we grieving on the same level of, say, the classmates? No. Are we grieving on the same level as the parents? No. But we're collectively grieving. We saw the nation pour out their heart every time we've seen this happen.
Yes.
When we had it happen at the Pulse nightclub, when we had it to happen anywhere, and come to think about that, when we look at history of mass shootings, we've seen the nation, watch this, especially in time past, really grieve. But unfortunately, mass shootings and murders have become so common that we don't always hear about them as much. And I say that inside of this, we're in the month of April. And we're talking about April 20th, I believe, or 21st. April 21st, perhaps 1997 or 98 it was, or could have been 97 or whatever, Columbine High School.
Yeah.
It brought upon, that was the first most notable case that we saw of mass school shootings. And you think about it, it just went from there. We can go to Sandy Hook. We can go to Pearl, Mississippi. We can go to Aurora, Colorado. We can go, look, I'm just naming them off the top of my head. And there's so many more. So inside of that, we begin to have collective grieving. But then it became so much that, guess what? It almost starts seeming normalized.
Right.
Normalized.
Right.
And so when we
that's
look up,
that's something that you really don't want to see that as normal, but
no.
But it happens so often, so frequent until you kind of come to take it as, okay, when's the next one?
Yeah, it's less of a surprise, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And when I think about what happened in South Carolina there at the, at the AME church there, with the whole thing of them in Bible study being killed. Once again, theological paradoxes and folks find themselves saying, where was God? And how could that happen? And people start questioning anointings, and all kind of foolishness comes out of hurt, comes out of not being able to give an explanation for it.
Let me ask you this, Doc. I know there's different areas, different solutions, different areas where we can go seek to try and help our grieving and go through the grieving process of our grief. Being a musician and whatever, so many years, is it a good place to find ourselves to that music will benefit us? Find some area of music or some space in music that can benefit us going through the grieving process or helping us through that process, if that makes sense.
One of the most effective tools, in my opinion, of grieving and going through is music. Whether you are a musician and you're able to play, or you just find the right songs, the right words, sometimes even instrumentals can help you get through things. Personally, personally, when I've gone through just things, period, and I felt overwhelmed and felt like no one cared and felt like there was no one there, oftentimes I would go to the keyboard and just, I close my eyes and just allow my fingers to just start going and playing. And it oftentimes relieved me, it soothed me. I felt strengthened. Oftentimes lyrics would come up as a result of it. So
Right.
yes. So music is a great healer, just like artists. Artists out of that. People paint, people color, people draw, people do things, people become creative. So all those things are very therapeutic. And I always say, musicians are special. I tell people that, period. Yeah, the musicians are special because musicians are generally tuned to a frequency inside of it. That's why we can be musicians. We can show up, having never talked to each other, and yet it still feel the same vibes and communicate. Bam, right there. We know right where. And that's just that type of thing. And same way with music being therapeutic inside of grief. I know that inside of dealing with kids that have gone through domestic violence and things, art therapy and music therapy is one of the things that has helped them to overcome and become whole.
Right. Because I asked that because I read something where it said music can be extremely healing. It
Yes.
can take you back to the time when you felt something, happiness, sadness, gratefulness, whatever it is. When you hear it, you are transported back in time. Music allows you to access yourself.
Absolutely.
It
Absolutely.
allows you to access, to yourself. So
Absolutely. Music is a powerful medium, brother. It is. I cannot tell people music. Think about it. Music can change the whole mood. If you want to watch a movie, and here's the thing about it. If you took away the sound effects in a movie, that means the sound, the music, or what all that, it would. I promise you, it wouldn't be a good movie at all.
right.
But it's the music that changes the mood. It's the music that gives you anticipation. The music that you find relaxed. Think about how you feel like at the end of a good movie, and then they got the real good song, and the song come forward. You feel a certain way. In the same way it is when we're dealing with ourselves individually. These are mediums that could help us through our grieving process. And I believe in music. Play music. Listen to music.
Right. So those that are viewing and those that are watching, find you some music.
Yeah.
I asked that purposely. Find you some music that would help you go through it, that'll help you heal, and whatever it might be, it's going to take you through those process. I know with me, with my dad, one of my dad's favorite song was "I'll Fly Away." So I would just "Some Glad Morning," and I would just start singing, humming that song.
Exactly.
And that was my way of connecting with my dad, and that was a remembrance for him, for me,
Exactly.
for him. So if those that are going through, I asked that question to get Doc's input about it, but they're go find some music, find some music, find some music that suits you, that fits you, and help you get through it. Last one, Doc. A lot of times people that going through a loss and going through grieving, they experience broken heart and sometimes and the will to live. um Someone like losing someone you love can feel like the end of the world. You may feel as if your heart is actually breaking. Genuine heartbreak refers to a emotional state that people attribute to the physical sub symptoms of being broken hearted. But what can we follow after the but?
Here's the thing about it. People have to acknowledge that is what they feel. You can feel brokenhearted. You can feel all of those things. And all those things, the first thing you got to do is you got to acknowledge that's the way I feel. Now, one of the things I will say is this. You're going to go through the process of feeling different ways, multitude of emotions. The thing about it, when we start becoming concerned with it, if it persists over a long period of time, persistent sadness or hopelessness, That's something that raises a flag. Feeling consistently sad, empty, feeling as if hopeless, little relief, even from activities that you used to enjoy, and now they have no effect on you. Now you may be experiencing some symptoms of depression coming in there. Recognize things like changes in your sleep pattern. How am I sleeping? Habits such as insomnia or the other part, excessive sleeping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you want to start noticing that loss of interest or loss of pleasure, things that you used to really enjoy doing, hobby and socializing, and if over a period of time you no longer feel that, yeah, you definitely want to get some help. Then you want to seek support, because those are some signs of depression. We talked about it a few shows back. Changes in your appetite or weight, significant weight loss or weight gain. Due to changes in your appetite. Those are signs that depression may be coming in. Believe it or not, fatigue or being low energy is another one of those things.
Right.
Feeling unusually tired, sluggish, lack of energy most days. So we want to acknowledge those things there and seek help and seek support. That's not the thing you say, well, I'm just going to weather through it. No, get some help, get support.
Yeah. Doc, before you go, we got like 4 minutes. If you can do it in 2, talk to those, some of those that just lost and they're going through closing some things like accounts, like the house, and deciding on selling the house, and what you're gonna do with the house after losing a father, a mother. Um,
Yeah.
help. Just speak to them for a minute how to process that and get through that part.
Well, I'm going to say this: it's tough. We can't even mask that. It is tough. It is one of the reasons that it is so good if you have a living will or you have a testament or something that gives those instructions of what to do, when to do it inside of that. The other part of that is this: if that does not exist and you now have to make those decisions, I want to tell you to take your time, although time may not be on your side if we're talking about something that may be, say, for instance, we hope it's not in foreclosure right now. Say, for instance, hopefully there's not so much indebtedness that you've got to answer some right now. But I will say, take your time. Don't make haste decisions. Don't make haste decisions. I invite, that's where a multitude of counsel is good, to begin to figure out the process. What is it that we want to do? What is it that we need to address? How we should address it, and make those decisions based upon that. Don't feel so pressured. I got to do it right now. Take your time, process it out, think it out, do all you can to not allow greed to come in and divide things, because greed will do that. At this point, you need each other more than ever. And, and making good decisions are so important. And I will tell you that it can make a difference in the way y'all settle things inside of the death. And and when it's done right, you all feel that you've done something right. Because I always say, do it in honor of the one that's lost, that's left.
Right.
Do it in their honor. Right. And it changes the perspective.
Right. Wow. Thank you, Doc. Appreciate that. Hey, listen, y'all, you've been locked into the South Florida Live podcast with my good friend, my brother, Dr. J.R. Thicklin. We have been navigating through the process of grieving and understanding the symptoms of depression. And we just want to talk to grieving, those that are going through. I get the inboxes. I think Doc get them.
Yes.
Listen, you're welcome. I mean, we really want to help those that are going through this time. I have a good friend that's still going through, and I try and give them as much as I can. But I'm so thankful that they do tune in on Mondays to hear what I get, what I receive, to share, to give to the doc, for he can explain it to us better. So thank you, Doc. Thank you, man, for joining us. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking out of your time. Joining us. We appreciate you so much, brother.
Absolutely.
Hey, listen, you've been locked into the South Florida Live podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Brown. And hey, y'all, it's that time. I appreciate you guys. I love you. I adore you. I give you I thank you Those that want to support, you know, you got the number right there. Hey, listen, I'll pray for you. Listen, you pray for me. Let's watch God change things. God bless you.
Email your idea for show topics to the South Florida Live Show at gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in to South Florida Live with your host, Jeffrey Brown.